Hey, you're wide receiver Khalil Shakir, right?
I sure am, kid. Here, go long.
Whoa! You're pretty good at football, man.
And you guys are pretty good at pizza.
Oh, sick. Dude.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Pay the Bills podcast here on Trainwreck Sports. Let me bring in the crew. This is Jake Micah, joined as always by Mike Partha, Mike Bunt, and Carson Hayek. And we had a Sunday, gentlemen. We had a Sunday. It's not Victory Tuesday. It's Victory Week. I've declared it since the Bills are on a bye. We get this whole week. Why not? The guys are celebrating. We get it too. So it's Victory Week. The Bills, if you were living under a rock since Sunday, defeated the Kansas City Chiefs. And you really had to be, because it was literally the most watched NFL game since 2007, guys. 2007 Patriots Colts was the only game that has been watched more than this since then. I think it was 31.2 million viewers got to enjoy the Buffalo Bills victory on Sunday. I'm going to start with you, Bunt, and we'll go around the horn. Just what were your takeaways Sunday? You were in the stadium, so you got the full atmosphere. What were the vibes like? Just the floor is yours. Any direction you want to go. We're celebrating a victory week here, so celebrate the way you want to, man. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It was electric at Highmark Stadium on Sunday evening. And my number one takeaway is that the Bills don't need to put out miraculous performances to beat teams like Kansas City anymore. They just played their own brand of football, and they were the better team, and they deserved the victory. It's to the point now where in the past, and I know the Chiefs are coming off back-to-back Super Bowls, but I really do believe the peak of the Chiefs was probably 2020 to 2022 when they still had Tyreek Hill and that offense, scored 30 points a game at will. They struggle at times to generate explosive plays, which really narrows their margins on a game-by-game basis. And everybody was pointing out about how many close games Kansas City has had this year. It was only a matter of time before they lost one. And what I was most encouraged by with the Bills is, like I said, like their run game wasn't even clicking, and they still found a way to put 30 points. Everyone wanted to make fun of everyone eats when the offense was struggling a little bit against Baltimore and Houston. But right now you see a Bills offense where everyone really is eating on any given game. No Keon Coleman, no Dalton Kincaid. Your run game is struggling. And then who steps up? Curtis Samuel, Amari Cooper with a couple big catches. Obviously, Khalil Shakir doing the same thing he does every week, Mr. Consistency. And then this defense with Bernard in it, you could see a total difference. Mahomes might be able to take advantage of the Bills' defense when they're missing Bernard and don't have Milano. But now with the steps that Dorian Williams has made, with Bernard now being a leader on this defense, and then maybe able to get a little bit of a pass rush, and even the safety play with Rapp and Hamlin really elevating throughout the season. I think it's clear right now the gap has never been more narrow between or has never been slimmer between the Chiefs and the Bills. And any one of these teams can make a run and win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, well said. Partham, how are you feeling after Sunday and a couple days later?
Feeling a little better, feeling pretty good with our as the Chiefs fans like to needle at me and point out when I was pointing out how depleted our team was. Yeah, they were a little depleted themselves, but seeing the Bills being able to confidently beat this Chiefs team with, as you said, Bunt, without Keon, without Kincaid, without Spencer Brown, without Matt Milano still trying to find his way back, feeling pretty confident. Obviously, no one, despite what Chiefs fans are saying out there, no one is claiming this is our Super Bowl. No one is saying this means we're going to beat them in the playoffs. So I think Chiefs fans realized that their team was not really worthy of a 9-0 record leading up to this point. Like I said, they had a horseshoe up their up their rear ends, and they gotten away with at least a couple of games this year, maybe more. Hadn't had a victory more than 13 points margin of victory, and we came in with not all of our weapons, and we proved that they are who we thought they were.
They are who we thought they were.
You guys both brought up some great points. Parthy, with the one score thing entering Sunday, there was a thing that was posted. If one score games were flipped, the Chiefs would be 2-7. So, like we said, I do believe they were not as good as that 9-0 record. They were frauds to an extent. Obviously, this team's going to get healthy with Milano, Keon coming back, and Spencer Brown. To win that game without those three major guys along with Kincaid, I mean, that has to be talked about. For guys to elevate their game in the backup situation, Dorian Williams, he's been phenomenal all year long. Dawson Knox had his most productive game of the year. And Ryan Vanderbark was phenomenal at right tackle. He was unnoticed, which is what you love to see out of your backup right tackle. But I could only imagine the absolute feel and vibe that stadium was like. It must have been chaotic, especially on Allen's touchdown run. This to me was definitely a win that was much needed. If the Bills want to get that 1 seed, they've been so close these past few years, and it seems like if they can get that 1 seed, it might be the one that pushes them over the edge. Still a lot of work to do down the stretch. KC's got a relatively easy schedule, but if the Bills want any hope at that, I think that this game was the tide turning, and it was great to see KC, Mahomes going out sad in a 9-point outing for once. So I was thrilled with the win. Although we've seen this trick way too many times, it doesn't mean anything until the postseason. So although I'm happy, I'm not content.
You mentioned it's critical for the 1 seed, and that's the one thing I take away from this game is what the Bills have gained is a little bit of an inside track on the 1 seed. Now, I think it's been pointed out that Pittsburgh has a game coming up this Thursday. If they win, they will also be at 9-2 with the Bills being on a bye week. I think Pittsburgh at this point would overtake the Bills for number 2 seed. I don't know what tiebreaker that would be. I think the Bills are 3-0 in the division. Pittsburgh's currently 1-0. Bills have 7-2 conference record. Pittsburgh 5-1. I think maybe it might come down to the conference record winning percentage. Although,
yes,
yeah, I'm not. So it's even with the tiebreaker over the Chiefs, there's still the Steelers lurking in those top 3 spots. So nothing's set in stone right now, obviously, and it's all going to come down to who's performing well in these last few weeks, what schedule they're going to face, and how it all falls together.
And before Jake takes over, this is where my cockiness is going to step in. I'm going to say something that people don't want to hear. There is no conversation right now for the 1 seed, and there's no conversation about Pittsburgh overtaking the Bills for the 2 seed. The way it's going to be is the way it is right now, 1, 2, 3. Kansas City plays Carolina and the Raiders the next 2 weeks. They have 3 semi-tough games remaining on their schedule against Pittsburgh, against the Chargers, and teams like Denver. The fact of it,
they got Houston too.
They might
Houston too.
1 or 2 of those games, but the Bills still have to play the Lions and San Fran and the Rams. It's not basically the Bills have to essentially lose at max 1 game the rest of the year and hope that Kansas City loses at least 2. The probability is 36% of the Bills.
I hear you. I wouldn't put the Rams in the same category nearly as the Lions. Maybe not even San Fran.
I'm not saying the Bills can't do it, but the likelihood of them doing it is supremely. It's a very minimal. And then you look at Pittsburgh; they have an 8% chance of being in the chase for the 1 seed. And you look at Pittsburgh's schedule and who they have left. Pittsburgh's going to lose a minimum of 2 more games this season.
They have the Eagles, and you mentioned they have the Chiefs. So at least one of those teams is going to knock the other one a little down a peg.
And not to be this guy, but the way it's sitting right now would be optimal for the Bills. You're in a 2 spot where a team you're likely going to play a team like either the Chargers or Denver in a 7 seed. If Pittsburgh can stay as a 3 instead of Baltimore, you have the possibility of hosting Pittsburgh in an AFC divisional round. So could you imagine going Denver, Pittsburgh, first round, second round? That'd be the easiest matchups that the Bills have had since 2020 when they went Colts, Baltimore. And I'm not saying the Bills would win both games. They could easily lose to either team, but you're not playing Cincinnati or Kansas City in the second round. And then you would be either on the road likely against Kansas City in the AFC Championship or home against Baltimore. I don't hate it the way it's set up right now. The 1 seed talk, it's way too premature because you're assuming Kansas City's going to lose games. And I don't think you can ever make that assumption with a team that's won back-to-back Super Bowls.
The win makes it possible this weekend, though.
It's
If they
possible.
lost this weekend, they would forget it. But you bring up a great point. This is extremely favorable. I would love a rookie Bo Nix to come into the stadium wild card weekend. Sure, we can lose any possible game, but I mean that's about as favorable as it gets when it comes to playoff teams. And you got the Steelers. I don't know how they are. What are they? 8-2 right now. I don't know how that's possible. Justin Fields had a great showing, and Russell Wilson. Neither of them scare me, in my opinion. They've been on an absolute heater as of late. But let's face it, if Justin Tucker wasn't washed up a little bit, I think they lose that game Sunday. And Baltimore had plenty of opportunities to win that football game. Lamar Jackson didn't play his best game. So either team I'm fine with playing. It's just going on the road to Arrowhead that one more time. It's a little difficult. But Mahomes and that team, they're difficult to beat in the postseason. They show they don't need home field advantage necessarily. So right now, all this talk, like you said, it is a little premature, but it's fun. That's why we're here doing it tonight.
For me, it's not so much the home field advantage because the last 2 years, obviously, the Bills have proven that they're not immortal at home. It's really more so skipping the wild card and getting another week worth of rest, and possibly, for anybody that might need a returning Matt Blau trying to get back into form, and anybody else that might get banged up along the way. But Jake, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts from where you guys just jumped in there. I'll start with that. I agree with you there, Mike. It's not as much about the home field. Obviously, we can't say that with the Kansas City situation. Like, they lost at home last year. It is what it is. I still would rather avoid going to Kansas City for the championship game if possible, which is why I think the 1 seed's beneficial. Do I think it's make or break for the Bills' Super Bowl chances? Not at all. I think the spread's not changing too much if that game's in Buffalo or in Kansas City, if they're both in the championship game, right? Feel better as a fan about it. The win this week mattered because it does give you the hope. It is a little early. Every team has 6 games left. And even looking at the standings now is it's fun to see and start, percolating with the playoff matchups and everything. But some of these teams could go on a huge run. Some of these teams could fall off the face of the earth. We got a lot of space left, but I am going to push back on you guys a little bit with the Kansas City schedule, because while they have some very easy games, we cannot discount how good this LA Chargers team has been. And I don't know who it was. There's some guy on Twitter. I got to go get my receipts up, because when I put my season predictions out there, I had the Chargers 13-4 or 12-5. And I even admitted in the thing, I was like, this is probably too high, but they're going to be really good. And he came at me. He was like, Chargers are going to be trash, all this other stuff. So I'm going to go back and find it. But that's a good Chargers team. They play Houston at home, and then it's at Pittsburgh, at Denver, back-to-back weeks. That Steelers team. Now, the reason Lamar struggled on Sunday, Carson, a little bit was because that Steelers defense is one of the best in the league, and they made his life hell, especially when it came to passing situations. They're going to do that for anybody, especially in Pittsburgh. And we've seen the limitations of this Kansas City passing offense. So that game is going to be a struggle, I think, and the game that first team to 20 might win. I think that's a good opportunity. And Denver could be playing for a playoff spot at home, and it's a team who lost on a blocked field goal. So those are your 2 chances. If the Chiefs lose those 2 games, and it's back-to-back games with a team who's won this many titles, whatever it is, what it is, or can slip up to one of the home games. So you get 2 of those. The Bills going 5-1 is pretty realistic to me, with a loss at the Lions and winning the rest of them. That seems realistic to me in the way that they're playing this year. They could be a 14-3 team. Am I going to predict it happens? No, but that's the path. And the Steelers got to play the Browns and the Bengals twice still. So you know how the AFC North games work. They still have to go to Baltimore again, and they have Kansas City. They're going to lose and slip up a couple times there.
I do have the math for you, by the way. This is updated. According to the Athletic playoff projections, which uses the New York Times information, Kansas City has a 63% chance of getting the 1 seed.
Yeah.
The
that
Bills
sounds about right.
The Bills have a 27% chance. And that's after the head-to-head matchup. Because here's the thing we really have to factor in. The Bills are going to be underdogs against Detroit. And most of the models are going to give them less than a 40% chance of winning that game. The Bills are great, but Detroit right now is considered the best team in football.
Yeah.
And as much as we might overlook San Francisco on Sunday Night Football, that's still a team that is as talented as anyone in the league, that's desperate right now. And sometimes in cases of desperation, that's when you get a team at its scariest. The Bills went into Kansas City last year and beat the Chiefs when they had a 500 record because they needed it more. So I still think there could be a couple losses on this Bills schedule. And that's not to say like it would be a bad thing if the Bills went 13-4. It's more so to say right now the Chiefs have the easier schedule. And yes, they're going to probably lose a game, maybe two. But the Bills are also on a 6-game winning streak right now. And you would assume the Bills are likely going to drop a game or two as well. So basically the math and the margins are saying, yes, like you might get some to go your way, but you also have to play nearly perfect down the stretch at the same time. Is it possible? Yes, 27% ain't zero, but it's also saying there's a 73% chance it's not going to play out.
Make a prediction here.
The odds.
Make a prediction here. If the Bills can beat the Lions, does that mean they run the table the rest of the way?
I would say yes, but like the Rams game strikes me as a game similar to the Colts game. Like I could see the Rams being sneaky tough for the Bills. Like I could see San Fran being sneaky tough. And yes, like if they win 2 of the next 3, yeah, they're probably going to go 14-3. And then you're saying, okay, like can Pittsburgh upset Kansas City? Absolutely. Can Denver beat Kansas City? Absolutely. But like we have to remember, like even though like we can say, well, Kansas City's had all this luck and 1-score games, blah 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 blah. Like the fact of it is, they do find a way to consistently win these games. So like I do want to say like luck will eventually like go against them, but I don't know if I'm 100% willing to say that because
that's fair.
Time after time after time after time to win those games. At some point, I gotta say you're doing something right. And when you're talking about like slim margins in the NFL, how many times does Kansas City create that takeaway? How many times does Pat Mahomes get the ball, could go on the drive, or like even the field goal? Like how many times? How many teams in the league could be facing a 35-yard field goal, and you're just like, yeah, Kansas City's gonna find a way to do something here. Like you can't explain it, but for whatever reason, they just find a way to get it done.
But that margin for error has been slimmer for them this year.
100%.
And with the way that some of the teams, and we won't be able to talk about this the next 2 weeks because the Panthers and Raiders, they're going to wipe the floor with those teams. They're going to be, what would they be then? 11-1 by then, and they'll be
that's the tough part.
Those odds will be crazy. But then those last 5 games, Chargers at Cleveland, Texans at Pittsburgh, at Denver. That's why it's tough,
though. That's why the math makes it difficult because you're talking about they're already going to be 11-1.
Yeah.
So now you're not saying like if the next 3 games,
but
Pittsburgh, Denver, like Chargers, you'd be like, oh, like we're gonna have like an even contest going forward. But you're assuming they're going to win to pad it a little bit, and then you're saying like, well, what are the situations like even Denver, the Denver game, like is Denver the last game of the season? Are they going to be fighting for a playoff spot? Probably, but like you don't know if all that for sure yet. Like so,
but what's the worst case scenario? If the Bills lose to the Niners, they're basically out of this race as it is, right? So, if the Bills win against the Niners and the Chiefs are 11-1, you're still looking at 5 weeks left and only 1 game back.
And the Detroit game,
that's everything.
Will determine everything. And like here's the other fact too. This might, and you probably always take the bye week and the rest over anything else. But if I told you the Bills are the 1 seed and they're going to play Baltimore at home in the divisional round, or they're the 2 seed and you go Denver, Pittsburgh,
I would rather avoid.
Honest, if we want to talk about track records and we want to talk about playoff track records, I'm not afraid of Baltimore in the playoffs.
I'm really the only thing I don't want to do is go to Pittsburgh or go to Kansas City.
I think Baltimore is like I'll agree with you guys with this. I'm not scared of Baltimore in the playoffs, and I don't think that the regular season game.
But is it a lot more easier?
I'll tell you how it will be. But I will say this: out of all the teams in the AFC, Baltimore is 100% the worst matchup for this Bills team with what they bring to the table.
Sure.
And Derrick Henry changes the entire equation of what Baltimore is in the playoffs. And yes, they're capable of losing to the Browns and the Raiders. But I'm telling you this. if I had a path that is Denver, Pittsburgh to the AFC Championship, I think that's an easier path to the AFC Championship than just beating Baltimore head-to-head.
I will say I'm confident in Bobby Babbage being able to make adjustments, especially when we get Matt Milano back in the lineup.
I agree with you, but there's going to be different scenarios. I'm telling you, this month of December is going to be fascinating.
Well,
because
that's the big thing.
The Bills clinched the AFC East with 1 win and a 1 Miami loss. Yeah. So, like, this could be clinched on Thanksgiving if Miami loses on this week and then loses on Thanksgiving. So you're talking about a scenario where, like, the moment that 1 seed is no longer in play, you start having your conversation about
sure.
Matchups for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be tricky down the stretch, but in the whole AFC too, because we're not even talking about Baltimore in this conversation, but Pittsburgh, as we said, schedule with all those division games, you never know what's going to happen. Baltimore still has a tough schedule too, but they're only 2 games back and can get even back with the Steelers and get a flip on that game at home in Baltimore in a couple weeks. So they could be in that conversation, and that could be a thing where the North kind of decides itself out and takes themselves out of the 1 seed conversation.
My prayer right now is that Pittsburgh wins the AFC North.
I agree.
If you're a Bills fan right now, you should pray Pittsburgh wins the AFC North. That was such a big win for the Bills' hopes in going forward. And then if the second prayer you have is that Cincinnati misses the playoffs, which looks likely now. Like, if you have Baltimore as that 5 seed and you know that it's some mix of Denver, the Chargers, and maybe Indianapolis, I don't want Miami to get back into it just because I don't want them to make the playoffs. But if you could have a mix of it's Indy, Denver, and the Chargers 6, 7, and the Bills are in that 2 spot, you're talking about teams that just can't keep up with you offensively. So realistically, playoff wise, what has killed the Bills really in the playoffs? It's been going up against teams like Cincinnati and Kansas City that they don't have any answers to slow them down when it matters the most. But if the Bills are playing offenses that their defense can hold in check, realistically, there's no excuse for the Bills not to make a deep run. So that's what I'm banking on. This might finally be the year where things line up the way you want it to line up.
Yeah, it could fall. It could fall, and just the way the contenders are lining up, I think the Bills. I mean, just looking at the rest of the league, you got to feel good about the way they're playing, the way the team looks, and everything. It's not going to be, I don't know. It's just not as top end as top end teams as it was the last couple of years. You got Kansas City, Buffalo, who are going to be right there. But yeah, that group, honestly, from 3 to 7, they could beat the hell out of each other. I wouldn't be surprised any which way. The Chargers getting some wins on those teams, Denver getting wins on those teams. The AFC wildcard games could be super competitive with those 3, 6, and 4, 5 matchups, depending on how it falls. So it's going to be nuts. Going back to the 49ers, Mike, I'm a one that loves a desperation spot and will go on that. They might be at this already with a kitchen sink game. They go to Green Bay this week in a game where they're 5 and 6 and could fall another game behind. So it's going to be desperation time for the rest of the season. But for a game where you have to turn it around now, that could be this week for them on a national stage in Green Bay against a team who, they could see in the playoffs later on, obviously conference game, everything else. So just noting that, just to see a little look ahead of where they're at. Cause after the Bills, their schedule gets a lot nicer besides a game against the Lions. And so it's going to be interesting. There's the races in both conferences are very compelling right now, specifically in the North on both sides. So I'm very excited to see how it breaks out.
The NFC is just down to Detroit and Philadelphia. There's basically no
for the one,
reach. Yeah.
It's
I gotta say though, I am so grateful for just the opportunity that we are given now at 9-2. No worry at all about who's coming down to the AFC East. In years past, we had to battle it out with Miami till the very end. This year, it seems it's almost too easy going. No stress here since week 6. So
they've had the shirt printed for weeks. AFC's 24 champions.
The shirt has been printed for almost 2 months now. It's been a phenomenal feeling. You get the win off of KC. I mean, growing up as a kid, we never got these wins. So come on, I'm just grateful that we're in this spot right now, and I hope this is the year, like Bunt said, and if it plays out the way we want it to, why not us? So I'm thrilled right now with where we're at.
How could you not be? I mean, really, like, just the thing we haven't talked about enough about is just enjoying what we enjoyed Sunday and the way this Buffalo Bills team is playing. I mean, just I'm sitting there. I had a real reflective microcosm moment as a Bills fan, and specifically, I guess, a fan of Josh Allen, because you get that run at the end of the game, and I'm in a, just a normal Chicago establishment here with some friends who don't really care about the Bills at all, or just casual NFL fans watching. And he pulls that play out at the end, and everybody's going crazy. They're like, "Oh my God, how did that happen?" And I was happy. I'm clapping. I'm excited. But I had like such a sense of normalcy watching it, and it really hit me hard, because I was like, "This isn't normal. Like, this isn't normal.
Yeah.
This isn't what's supposed to happen." But it felt so right and normal. Go ahead, Mike.
Can I just say about that run? I mean, it's a great moment. It was on 4th and 2. It was most certainly a game-clinching play. And you can add it to the list of iconic Josh Allen plays that he's had both in the regular season and the postseason. Am I being a bit of a Debbie Downer by saying it wasn't as great as everybody's making it out to be? Like, the run itself, like the moment is great. It was a moment for the stadium. It's a moment against the Chiefs. The run itself is just, typical Josh. He didn't leap over anybody. He didn't juke anybody out of their shoes like Barry Sanders making people break their ankles. He didn't stiff arm anybody. He did
lower his shoulder into a linebacker.
I think someone had the theory that he was sliding earlier in the game. I don't know if he was doing this deliberately, but he was sliding on a couple of runs earlier in the game. And I think some of those Chiefs who were just basically flailing at him, or kind of, trying to give him a bump without wrapping up, were expecting him maybe to go down so they'd run out the clock. But no, he just kept running right through all of them. And it was very poor tackling. It was everybody
terrible.
As the great Vince Lombardi would say, everybody was just grab.
Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody touching. Just grabbing, everybody. Grab. Nobody touching.
You know what I was thinking as that run was happening? I was almost wondering if the Chiefs were told to let him just score after he got past the yard mark. Like, I'm not saying, like, it doesn't make 100% sense to let them score in that situation, because you still had timeouts and a 2-minute warning, so you still technically could have held them to a field goal. But there is a scenario where, like, the Bills with one more first down would have been able to kneel out the clock, and maybe you're thinking, if we can get the ball back and score quick enough. I doubt that was the case.
I think if it would have been a 1-score game, if it was tied and he scores a touchdown and they can answer with the touchdown, that would make a little more sense.
It just didn't seem like the Chiefs were interested in tackling Josh Allen.
I think that was it. I just think they weren't interested in tackling Josh Allen. They knew it was done. What were they going to? Were either of those guys giving their best effort? What were they doing to Josh Allen?
It really did appear like they were making a business decision in that moment, where they basically were like, you know what, this is one game. We're not going to, like, get ourselves hurt and risk something. When
the second defender, Josh seeks that contact out on the second defender. That guy wanted he was gonna maybe push him or wave at him. Josh lowers his shoulder and looks into him and is like, "No, I'm bringing this to you, buddy. Like, this is what we're doing here." And I think that's what it was for me about it. It wasn't the most special run. It was just in that moment, delivering, and the demeanor that he did it with. It was just like, this is our guy, and this is not what anybody else does. Like,
how about that little peanut punch to the head at the very end? I mean,
bro,
a second week in a row that this stuff is happening.
Yeah,
and it may be inadvertent. And it's like, oh, I'm going for the football, but I just so happened to clock your head.
Also, the other thing right now with this Bills team is, like, we're finally at that point where, like, this is Brady Manning now, to where like, even if you don't do the sensational, you're going to hype it up as sensational when you convert in that moment. It's like when Derek Jeter made that incredible catch where he then jumps into the stands. Well, it was an incredible catch back in the day, but he caught it on the field of play and then ends up leaping into the stands.
Yep.
But, like, you can freak out about it because it's Derek Jeter and it's in that moment. So, like, there's a little bit of exaggeration that's allowed. Like, Josh Allen in that moment, after you've had the CBS set in Buffalo, at Jim Nance, you've been hyping it up as the game of the year all week long, all day long. Like, there's a little bit of sensationalism there, but I don't think that's a bad thing. That's just more of a sign of respect for where your team is and how the thought process is. Like, yeah, like in the landscape of like Josh Allen touchdown runs, like as far as impressiveness, probably not in like an elite level of impressiveness, but like in terms of like that moment against that team, like to knock off an undefeated perfect Chiefs team that's won 2 straight Super Bowls, like that's why it gets that play of the year talk. Like no one's ever going to think like that was actually like one of the craziest plays I've ever seen though.
But how many quarterbacks are scoring on that play? How many quarterbacks are scoring a touchdown?
From 20 yards out,
Two?
not many, yeah.
Not many.
Two? That's what I mean. Like
even
3?
the running quarterbacks, they'd be able to, run by a couple of guys, but bowl over a couple of guys.
I could see Josh, maybe 4 guys in the league right now who could do it. It would be Josh, Lamar, Daniels, and Hurts. Those are the only guys I think. And even Hurts, I'm like iffy on.
Hurts is huge.
I'm
He's a
iffy on
questionable,
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he's not as quick. He's not as fast.
push legend.
Exactly. Like that's it. And those are the guys on the planet Earth that can make that play in the NFL right now. And I think Josh does it better than anybody. You got that freight train coming down at you. I think that's what I don't know who that defensive back was, but I felt him in that moment. You see Josh is lowering his shoulder. Someone had a great picture of it. I want to go find it because you see Josh like looking at him and he's like, oh shit. Like here we go.
It's also his awareness too on the play. Like he drops back, does the fake pass, the pump fake quick,
which he threw the guy and he throws the guy in motion and talks about it after the game. How he does that just as a check to see.
He instantly sees the hole and then has the awareness. I'm bolting. Like he's not thinking at that moment.
No,
I'm getting a touchdown. He's thinking I need 2 yards. And honestly, like that's what makes Josh the ultimate weapon is the fact that on 4th and 2, like most teams, you're thinking, okay, are we going to hand it off? Are we going to do like a quick pass? What are we going to do here? Every time in 4th and 2, I'm with what Tony Romo was saying. How's he going to use his legs to get a first down here? And because like that's more high school football and like college football stuff. Like Josh Allen is essentially like the high school style quarterback that was talented enough to carry it over into the NFL. While a lot of these other guys, they get to the NFL and they're not fast enough or they're not physical enough. Like Josh has been granted this like freak athleticism to where he can do all the things that you're doing at the lower levels when you're more athletic than everybody else. And he can still do it at 28, 29 years old, playing against the best in the world.
Yeah, and the scary thing is his mental part is catching up with his physical game, because I think I heard him say in the post-game comments that the reason he took off and ran is because he sent that guy motion to see if they were going to be in man. It looked like they were going to be in man, but as soon as they snap the ball, they drop into zone. And that's where within a second or two, he has to instantly recognize that and realize, oh, my guys like Shakir are going to be covered where I want to go to them. So he instantly decides, okay, 2 yards, that the spaces are going to be open, so I'm going to run it.
And that's the maturity. Like we've seen it on a couple different shows already, but like Dan Orlowski, I think, did a breakdown where earlier in the quarter when Curtis Samuel was open, I think what they were doing man-to-man at that point in time, and Samuel gets wide open, a little bit of a pick play, and you obviously go back to
and let's just mention to the Chiefs fans, they run that pick play all the time, so they got no room to complain about nothing, all right?
But then you go to a similar mesh type situation on a 4th and 2, and like any good defensive coordinator would do, Spagnuolo adjusts, and he was hoping that adjustment would catch Josh off guard, and maybe like here's also credit to the Bills' offensive line. You have guys, I think it was something like Cyrus Kwanjo, was he guarding Chris Jones, and then it was something like Ryan Van Denmark on Karlaftis. Like you're talking about 2 young linemen, like one guy making his first start for the Bills, another guy a second-year player, going up against 2 elite pass rushers in a 4th down situation, and they create the part of the hole. They give the protection to Josh to allow him to do what he needs to do.
Do you want to give more credit to Josh Allen? Joe Brady said that the look that they gave him was not what he was expecting. He said that he was expecting the look that they got earlier, and that so Josh made the adjustment. It wasn't Brady didn't make the adjustment. Brady was screwed. He said in the moment I was terrified, and Josh made the adjustment. And that's just a more credit to him. Like
how many quarterbacks? Like think about that. If you don't have a mobile quarterback like Josh Allen, you snap that. What are you thinking right there? By time like you have the ability to like get into the hole, you're probably getting tackled.
Could you imagine Aaron Rodgers with running that?
Yeah, like Aaron Rodgers ain't bolting forward for a first down there. So like
the only people bolting in the New York Jets organization are the GM and the coach.
Yeah, it's tough.
But that's an MVP moment there. And like I'll be real. Last year I was really salty when Josh Allen, in my opinion, had the best numbers in the league besides his interceptions and didn't even really get consideration. And Lamar had very mediocre numbers last year and won MVP. And everybody was like, well, he has the best team in the AFC. Well, now I think what you're starting to see a little bit after the Bills win that game and Josh Allen has his MVP moment is this Josh's best season statistically? Not even close. Like the only thing he's really has better numbers than he has in the past is limiting his turnovers. But like his yardage, his touchdowns, it's all down drastically compared to the past. But the Bills are winning at a high level. He's protecting the ball. And now I think this might be the year where Josh gets that boost because really the best statistical quarterback in the league right now, it's not even close. It's Joe Burrow. The dude has 27 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions and has over 3,200 yards passing. Like Burrow.
Yeah, I heard something crazy where every other quarterback that has had his stats were it's like 3,000 yards, somehow touchdowns, and like 4 or less interceptions. All those teams have gone like 13 wins or better or something like that.
Yep.
And so like it would be kind of ironic if Josh finally wins MVP in the year that like he's more down to earth, but that's just not the way people vote. So honestly, if the Bills end up going 14-3, like I think he's probably your MVP favorite, especially if Baltimore loses another game or two, because the only thing keeping Lamar in this top of the conversation is his stats combined with Baltimore being good. But if Baltimore's a wild card team at like 11 wins, you can't give that to Lamar after you literally use that reasoning to give it to him last year, when that reasoning would be why you would give it to Josh this year.
Yeah, it's a great
point. I really don't, besides Mahomes, who's having a mid-year on his own merit, I don't see another MVP candidate in the top like 7 playoff spots right now. The Chargers, Houston.
The other guy is Goff. I mean, if they just want to give it to him.
Yeah.
5 interceptions, though, I think took him out of the race. But who knows? He's been on an absolute heater besides that. But
if they go
I doubt it.
But you're not going to see a running back get it.
That's why I think Lamar and Henry should just cancel each other out at this point, because Lamar, their team's not having this year without either of them. Like Henry has made them a more explosive team and helped.
And also, who's doing it with the least amount of players? Like, let's be real. Like, in the perception of the Bills' weapons going into the year, and you're still winning at a higher level, it's like Josh is carrying this team. But if you're going to do most valuable player, like this is Josh, like doing it with a lot of unknown guys. Like we respect guys like Khalil Shakir and obviously James Cook and Dalton Kincaid, but where do they rank amongst their peers in the rest of the league?
Yeah.
Like, so if there was ever a year for Josh Allen to win MVP, it's this year. And the ironic part is many people have said is he'll be the first quarterback to go from being rated being overrated
to MVP in the same year.
The same year.
That's crazy.
Can we have a quick conversation about MVP in general? Like, should we have a separate award for most valuable quarterback and then another player that's not a quarterback be able to get MV player award?
They're never going to do it because of like historical reasons at this point.
Yeah.
So you just kind of got to think about that. MVP is that quarterback award and the offensive player of the year is the other award.
Or you just ignore awards in general. And
I really don't. I pay
crap.
I take way more stock when it comes to like football, basketball, specifically to the all-pro, all-NBA teams than I do like the awards themselves.
I think that's one thing that like advanced metrics is kind of like shown is that like a lot of media and like voters are just not sophisticated enough when it comes to like their reasoning and like their criteria for voting in these awards. Like to the point where like maybe in like 1980, like when like somebody would do something in 1980, you'd be like, it's because they have heart or like they're battling. Now we're like, yeah, that's not real. Like you're just really good. Like,
but that's also a good part of it from the 80s that I think is antiquated and is taken over, is that we still have local guys, a lot of local beat reporters who have these votes that are not watching other people play football.
And a lot of biases too.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Because of that.
You have some people that are saying like, I'm not voting for like Allen because like I think he's too sloppy and turns it over. Like some people that are still holding on to biases that they've had for like 2 or 3 years. Like it's a popularity contest. It's like it's
narrative driven. It is what can they make into the
100%.
Center 5-minute like clip package afterwards talking about the story of the year, like at the NFL honors, whatever the fuck they call their stupid award show. Like that's what they want.
Josh Allen could have been the MVP like 3 of the last 4 years.
For sure.
And like how does a quarterback that have 15 more touchdowns than the MVP like end up finishing third like for the honor? Like it's like that makes no sense. And like we always say now, like wins aren't a QB stat, but yet every MVP voter points to wins. It's like, well, their IQs right there are showing that like they don't even know shit to begin with. So it's just like it's tough.
And
like,
clearly they don't listen to Bruce Exclusive. Shout out to Bruce Nolan.
Yeah.
But you probably are right, Partham. Like it would probably be nice to like have differing awards, but basically how they do it now is MVP goes to the quarterback of the best team who has decent numbers. Like it's like the combination of best record, quarterback, also good stats, and then offensive player of the year is like the running back that will run for like 1,500 yards and have like 500 receiving yards, or it'll be like your wide receiver that goes off for like 1,700 yards or something.
Like Saquon or Henry 100% are going to be offensive player of the year guys, top 2. Saquon Barkley should have as good a case as anybody as MVP. He's not going to happen, but that dude's been the only reason the Eagles are at that point. So it's crazy. I want to jump back to before we do anything else MVP, to the Allen conversation, because I'm at the pro reference page up that you were talking about, Mike. And he really is like everything is about the same this year, like completion percentage. He's going to be down in yards per game, obviously, like because we were talking about that, like those things are down. Success rate is down even from the last 4 years of his. The only things that are really improved are his sack percentage and his interception percentage. Those are the things that are like have the biggest improvement from his last 2 years. And that's the play we're seeing. So it's taking away those negative plays. Will it make us happy
or infuriate us if he gets MVP this year? Obviously, we'd like that for him, but with not as impressive numbers as he's usually put up, the only one being, his lack of interceptions. If people are going to say, oh, we're going to give it to him now because he's not turning the ball over, is that going to make us more upset than it actually makes us happy that he wins it?
It's going to show how stupid the discussion is because Lamar won the MVP last year, people are now saying, well, Lamar's putting up way better numbers than last year, so he has to be the MVP this year, even though his numbers this year aren't even at where Joe Burrow is. So it's like when you give MVP to the quarterback of the best team, what you're basically saying is that it's a team award more than it is an individual award. And then that creates narratives when Lamar gets off to a good start this year that, oh, he has to be the MVP again. And then next thing you know, you have a guy winning 3 MVPs when he hasn't even been the second best quarterback in the NFL over the last 3 years. It's like you'll have Ravens fans making the comparison like, oh my God, like Lamar Jackson is way better than Josh Allen because Lamar has 2 MVPs. Josh Allen has none. And what it creates these stupid conversations with no logic behind it. Because I think if you ask any like smart executives over the last 5 years, it's clear like Mahomes number 1, Josh Allen / Burrow number 2, depending on who you ask, and then Lamar. And then only in recent years has Lamar really gotten back into the like I'm equal to like Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Pat Mahomes. But really, like it create these accolade-based awards that these accolade-based arguments create stupid arguments.
Well, I think Brandon Bean simply said
there's idiots everywhere.
Parthi, I think you just got to take it and run at this point. You just got to be grateful that he doesn't get robbed by Lamar these past few years, and then the Mahomes the 1 year. So I I would take it and run. I wouldn't ask questions anymore. We've already talked. These guys are a bunch of clowns who vote on it. So,
Well, the thing
for the most part, it's go ahead, Jake.
It's also just like they screwed themselves last year. Like the only reason that we can even have this argument can even happen this year is because it was so dumb. It made no sense that Lamar Jackson, and I'm not saying Josh Allen needed to be MVP last year, but the case for Lamar Jackson was literally just they are the best team in the NFL and Lamar is a good quarterback. That was literally the only thing that they asked of them. Lamar, you just should have switched them. Should have had Josh last year, and Lamar should run away with it this year. Lamar, what is a 7.810 like TD percentage, fucking killing it. His best passer rating he's ever had in his career. Like Lamar's been awesome this year.
And that's the thing.
They just screwed themselves.
And you can't credit him because you're afraid, because we've already gone so far and crediting him
exactly
a mediocre.
We had to jump through hoops last year to call him MVP.
If we're being real, I'm not taking the show to this point, but there is also a societal aspect of this. And also the where you could talk about how society judges people in general. And then number two, there's another aspect of this to where Lamar and Josh Allen were both very polarizing quarterbacks for very different reasons coming out of college. Lamar, because many people referred to him as a wide receiver and a running back, and Josh Allen because a lot of people looked at his college numbers and thought he was a parody of a prospect. So what happens is you create very intense feelings of people that support them and people that are against them. And so when a person exceeds expectations, people feel like they have to go out of their way to overhype it because they feel like there's people that are going to diminish their accolades no matter what they do. That's what happened last year with Lamar. He had a good year, but it got way exaggerated because there's a lot of people in the media that want to defend and hype up a player like that based on the prior ignorant comments made about him. And there's the same thing with Josh Allen with Bills fans because we know what he had to deal with early on in his career. And really what it comes down to it is let's stop having all of this stupid, ignorant commentary to begin with. And if we didn't ever give time to these idiots, we wouldn't need to have these conversations in the first place so we could truly evaluate them for what they are. Because for as many like fans across the league that might have in the last 2, 3, 4 years said stuff about Josh Allen and stupid things about him, there are a lot of Bills fans throughout the years, even in like recent times, that have called Lamar a running back and said the guy can't throw and say he's overrated. And like Lamar is a beast. Like right now we're blessed to have the quarterbacks we have in this league. And like Lamar is a future Hall of Famer. Josh Allen's a future Hall of Famer. And like any Bills fan saying Lamar sucks, they're stupid. And any Ravens fan saying that Josh Allen isn't as good as Lamar Jackson, they're an idiot too. And honestly, anybody that says that in general, you just gave me a reason to not listen to you ever again regarding anything football related.
Yeah, these guys can all be amazing at the same time. Only one can win. That's how this thing goes. So it's not mutually exclusive. Very well said, Bunt. Anything else before we go here, guys? We've had a great conversation here. We enjoyed our Chiefs victory. We'll still talk about the win over the Chiefs next week and break down some action leading into Niners week. But Carson, got anything? Any last words?
Shout out Curtis Samuel. I'll just leave it at that.
Hey, he's healthy, man. It's great. It's finally that turf toe's got to be healed. That pec not feeling it, and you could tell like he just had he looked happier, like body language wise. He looked more engaged. He had to have felt good. That was awesome. And now you look at these weapons, man. Now it's like a deadly group. Now I'm looking at
flourishing
next year, and I'm arguing. I was literally, guys. I know this is way too far ahead, and we still got games to win. But I was having like a screaming match with my brother on the phone last night because he desperately wants to draft a wide receiver early, and I'm like, I don't want it. I don't want any part of that. I love this group, and I would love to see it for another year. And Samuel's reemergence is one of the biggest reasons because that's the guy that we knew could be here. When we were hyping him up, Carson, we were on a podcast.
Oh my God, we gassed him up.
We talked about Curtis Samuel for like 20 minutes the day before the Bills signed him, and it was like the greatest text message I ever sent the next day about Curtis Samuel. And this is exactly what we thought. So yeah, the weapons and Samuel are one of the biggest reasons I'm encouraged the rest of the year because Cooper changed the trajectory of this room. And I mean, he was awesome too. And the 2 plays that he made. Yeah. It's been fun to see him.
I look forward to seeing Allen work with a fully integrated Amari Cooper, a healthy Keon Coleman, and a reemerging Curtis Samuel. And with Kincaid back and a Shakir producing the way he is, maybe this is where everybody eats.
and then I'll just say what I want to say, and we'll leave it out here. This is the best Bills team of Sean McDermott's tenure, and this is their best shot at winning a Super Bowl since the 90s. Right now, this is the way team football is supposed to look. Last year, when they were struggling, Sean McDermott referenced complementary football being good in all three phases. And yes, Tyler Bass, I pray to God he stops missing extra points every other week. But for the most part, like, this team is feeding off of each other right now. The offense has scored 30-plus points in 5 straight games while lacking the explosive all-pro caliber players. But you know what? This is the benefit of the everyone eats mentality. You're without 2 key players, but you have other players that can step up. And now that Curtis Samuel is finally emerging, that just makes him that much more dangerous come playoff time, because it can be a Curtis Samuel. It can be a Mac Hollins. It can be a Khalil Shakir, a Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, a Dalton Kincaid, a Dawson Knox, a James Cook, a Ray Davis, who makes a play, who could be the big players any given week. Look at Dawson Knox's last game. Had to step up in a big role and made some big plays. I think what's happening right now with this Bills offense is that for really the first time in Josh Allen's tenure in Buffalo, outside of maybe a little bit at the end of last year, they truly have balance where they have the ability to run the ball against most teams. And even when they don't, they can chew up clock most of the time. They have guys in the short passing game. They have now Cooper that can extend the field a little bit. And that balance is making Josh Allen, and then with like having a play caller like Joe Brady, who is also scheming some things and letting guys get their own. It's letting Josh Allen not have to do everything himself. Khalil Shakir has been an easy button with these short passes. And it's helping him because now when he does have to step it up once in a while, he can do that without it being the 3rd turnover of the game or the 4th turnover of the game.
Yeah.
So the offense is less stressed out as a unit. It has more answers for what the opposing defense is tossing at it. And I feel like this is an offense that is going to be set up for success in the playoffs. And then I'll be really quick about the defense. I loved guys like Poyer, Hyde, Trey, like Tremaine Edmonds, all these guys on defense. But sometimes when you have the same guys that have been on the team for playoff loss after playoff loss after playoff loss, sometimes you just need to change the culture a little bit and get guys that are younger that haven't gone through all of it. And a lot of these guys on the Bills defense, they had been getting older. Their play had been dropping off. And I was saying this earlier. I really think we're at the point right now where Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin aren't that far off from what Poyer and Hyde were last year anyway. Like
last year, yeah.
I think they're already at the point of what they were last year as it was. You see Bernard as like coming into his own at linebacker. Dorian Williams is really starting to elevate himself. The defensive line, like, if you can get Von to step up in big moments, like, think about it. We didn't have Von Miller in the playoffs 2 years ago. Last year, Von was like a shell of himself. What if big play Von, big game Von, steps into the equation?
Yeah.
And then you get Milano back. You have the opportunity against Baltimore the next time you play them to switch things up. If you want to stick with your base nickel, fine. But if Milano's healthy, you might even have the possibility to go some 4-3 to where you have Milano, Dorian, and Bernard out there. And that could help you potentially in the run game against Derrick Henry while also still having good coverage linebackers out there that can defend in the pass game. I feel like right now, in the past couple of years, there's always been something nagging this team. It's been injuries. It's been the emotional grind, the drain of the DeMar Hamlin situation. But right now, I'm looking at a team that's 9-2 that probably will be in a position to rest their guys for a week or two before the playoff starts, should be healthy, and should be able to maybe even have the advantage of playing a team like Denver in the first round, follow it up with Pittsburgh. It's lining up right now. Now, there's a lot of weeks left in the regular season. A lot could change from now and then to the end of the season. But for the first time, in McDermott's tenure, I feel like the cards might be in play for them to actually like legitimately like. I'm not talking like they've always had a chance in the Super Bowl, but this seems like it feels more real right now.
Yes, it does.
And who knows? Like,
you want to know why I think so?
But I feel like it's possible.
The reason I think everything you're saying is true is because it goes back to one of the first points you made about wanting the true balance of this team that McDermott wanted, the complementary football. The other thing I think Sean McDermott has always wanted, and it finally has, is he built a bully finally. And that's what the Bills did. The Chiefs are a physical football team. And I'm not saying the Bills bullied them and out-physicaled them for full 60 minutes, but they did it for the majority of that game. And that's why they won that game. And that's why they have that in the final minutes, they had the confidence to do what they could, especially on that last drive. You see 23-21, you knew what you guys all knew what that drive really meant. Yeah. And it was physical. And I think that's part of the reason we saw the early runs. And even if the run game wasn't going, the traditional run game wasn't cooking. I think it was more about, no, this is we're bringing our lunch pails today, and you guys will not survive 60 minutes with us. Like, it doesn't matter if it's close in the end, because you won't outlast us. We will last with everybody. We are that tough. We are that composed. And that is the thing that I think this group has that it has not had in years past. Not saying that they weren't tough in ways, and they clearly went through a lot, and they were a tight-knit group and everything, but it was always something in those moments where the chaos came out. And maybe it was just the quarterback. And maybe it's as much where they're following his lead, and his chaos has dropped considerably every single year, where he is now this year the most in control you've ever seen. And they're just taking his lead. Maybe even McDermott has fed off of that to an extent, where his quarterback has shown him some calm, that he can have a more sense of calm and not be as high strung, worried about these late game situations, fully trusting Josh to take care of the football and everything. But it's the physicality and the composure that are completely different to me with this year's groups, where I was not even nervous that they could, that I wasn't nervous that something, catastrophic was going to happen on that last drive. Like I have been in years past, like, oh man, like they're going to, McDermott's going to do something funky, game management wise, or Allen's going to make a bad decision here and something's going to go wrong and whatever else. Even leading up to it, I was like, looking around at my friends, I'm like, they're not going to kick it, right? Like, I don't really think they're going to kick it, but that's just years past of being like, how conservative do you trust the defense that much? Like, those are conversations I think we all would have had in years past with the McDermott team. So I just think it's an evolution. We've seen this team grow and change, even with all these similar pieces. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that, especially with the guys that have been brought in. So many guys that we've mentioned tonight are guys that have been drafted, built, developed, and only know this Bills culture. And you got a guy like Amari Cooper, Sunday saying he's the first time he's felt joy winning in years in the NFL, and that it's different in Buffalo. Think of the places he's been in the past. He's been with the Oakland Raiders, one of the worst ownership organizations in the NFL. The Dallas Cowboys, one of the worst ownership and culture organizations in the NFL. Even if they did winning while he was there, still we know how chaotic that is. And then the Cleveland Browns, enough said, right? Like, we don't need to get into all the issues the Browns have. So it's just a guy like that who can come in and be like, wow, this is different. Speaks tenfold to what McDermott's doing, the job they're doing, the job Bean's done, the job Allen's done to create that locker room culture where they all feel accepted. And I think it's finally paying off in dividends. And I made it through all that without saying the name Stephon Diggs, so I feel pretty good about that.
You don't talk his name anymore.
Only like about the cap room we're going to save once we finally get out of it next offseason.
If you say it 3 times, if you say it 3 times, he shows up. So we got to just be careful.
I think it's a Selena Gomez song. We don't talk anymore.
Yes, there you go. On that note, that's what we paid the bills. If you're getting a Selena Gomez reference from us, that's
me too.
From Bunty too. So, all right, guys, that was a great show. Shout out to Picasso's Pizza. Go to Gold Belly, get your pizza nationwide or locally in Western New York. But we paid the bills. We're on a bye week. What are you guys gonna do for your Sunday? This is crazy.
Watch football.
Yeah, I know.
Red zone.
It's not the best slate this week, but you'll usually get some chaos out of it. I'll be locked into Packers Niners for sure. I think that's at the very least. But a lot of time. We got a lot of time this week. And then we'll be back next Tuesday to preview the Niners game. But we paid the bills. So for Bunty, for Partham, for Carson, this is Jake Micah. Thank you, folks. Go Bills.
Let's go Bills.